Hello and welcome to the two-man power trip of wrestling. I'm your host, JP John Poz. With me today is a very special guest. He's a producer, a host, a podcaster. He does it all, folks. He is, of course, MSG, Mathew Shaffer-Gage. MSG, what's going on? How you doing today, sir?
Whoa, how did I get here? I'm your host on the scene where the air is clean. I'm lighting up that green. Ya boy, MSG.
Nice. Your own intro music. That's the first. I like that.
Right.
Nice.
That's what I do here. You call me. That's right. I'm the producer, the 2020 Hamin Media Group producer, former Hamin Media Group producer, editor in general. But we could talk more about that as I have tons of positive things I'm loving to say about them. But yes, I made it to the two-man power trip. It's pretty cool. Thanks for having me, John.
Yeah, no problem. No problem at all. I love the intro music. That was great. So what's up? What have you been up to? What's going on in your world? You said former producer.
That's right. That's right. For those who maybe never listened to a Hamin Media Group podcast or unaware, Hamin Media Group itself started off as a result of Ben and Big Ray himself, coming to I wouldn't say the greatest terms when the end of the relationship with another website, which I don't need to, banter and put them down. That they can do that themselves proudly on the internet or on the airwaves. But from a result of that, I ended up I was just this guy, just a wrestling fan, just like everybody else. Kind of feel like I at the moment was, I don't know, fumbling through life, John. I don't feel like I had any direction as a human individual. I had this background in sales and marketing that I was good in, don't get me wrong. And I toured around the United States and recorded an EP and played music, which that's off my track, off our EP from 2014. So I had an opportunity to, kind of see the United States a little bit. And I was kind of just coming back to reality. This was I don't know, like I mentioned, 2015, 2016. I just moved back with my parents for about a year just to kind of get back on my feet after being homeless for a couple months, which I got to tell you is another story in itself, but that's a fun experience. Did you want to interject there?
I was going to say, whoa, that was that's pretty intense to throw out there.
Yeah, I've got a pretty fun life, man. I mean, I grew up in, I wouldn't say the mean streets, but I grew up in some pretty rough neighborhoods of Southern California. Spent the first 14 to 15 years of my life there. Then my parents moved us to Montana. And I lived in Montana for a couple years, moved out to Arizona, started a band, like I mentioned there, toured a little bit, recorded. So now I'm at a point in my life, I'm 26, 27. And I'm I really don't know what I want to do yet. I knew I liked editing and video production and whatnot. And I had a passion for acting as I grew up doing that as well. I'd been in over 24 plays and theater productions as a kid growing up. So I had a passion just for entertainment. And I was just you know what? I think I'm going to try and get in with these wrestling people. And my goal was never to get on the air, really. Initially, it was just to try to be part of something cool and learn something new. And I just started sharing our content, sharing the content itself. I say ours still. Just started sharing the content itself via Twitter. And one day, your producer here, who's going to listen to this so he can check my bows, Rick Vickery was hey, I see that you're constantly sharing our content for Hamin Media Group as he was doing the Monday Locker Room. He's do you want to take over our Hamin Media Group account? And I was yeah. So I started doing that. And then eventually it just manifested into me one day, I don't know, listening to Ben through a combination of him and my dad and just a bunch of people. And I was you know what? I really need to put some effort maybe into my own passions. So I just went out and probably my tax return one year and just bought a bunch of equipment and started making YouTube videos, started making them with a green screen, which you can kind of see now. But this is probably a second or third iteration. I've gotten better now at what I'm doing. So I did some YouTube videos from One Wrestling with Bill Apter. And from there, I was just you know what? I'm going to go back to school for this. So I just went to school. And that ended up giving me an opportunity just through the practice of recording of getting on the air, John. That's how I started with Hamin Media Group. And eventually I turned into, I guess you might say, the right-hand guy of Ben Hamin for a good portion of the time. I'm not that kind of person that's going to be yeah, I'm the shit. I'm the best. Obviously, I think of myself as a high quality video producer and editor, but I also know that I'm replaceable, just like in this entertainment business, everybody is replaceable.
Of course, yes. But what kind of band were you in, by the way?
It was punk, pop, reggae, you might say, a little bit of that. I'd like to think it was more on the reggae side, but that's because I'm kind of a reggae head myself. I listen to a lot of old school reggae, like rest in peace, Lee Scratch Perry just passed away. One of the best producers of all time. Like there would be no Bob Marley and the Wailers without Lee Scratch Perry. Anyway, he just passed away. So there's been a lot of reggae legends that have recently passed away. But yeah, I like a lot of old school reggae, but I do listen to like some of the Cali reggae that's come out over the last 10, 15 years. I mean, I kind of played in that scene, being that my band was in Arizona. So I cross paths with those bands and open up for those bands. So I do have some sort of, I guess you might say, bias for some of the bands.
You play an instrument? Are you singing? What was your role?
Well, I mean, in the band itself, I played the keys. Actually, I'm a keyboardist.
Oh.
So I like to think of myself as, or I was told as, I was the white guy on the bubble, so as I could hold down that bubble itself. For those who understand the music terminology for reggae music, when you're hearing the heartbeat, if you will, on the keys. And I just started playing in my band, and that manifested. I played in like a really, really rootsy Jamaican band where I was like the white guy was just like the second keyboardist, and the main keyboardist was like from Jamaica, like a very kind of like, I wouldn't say a famous, but like known within the scene. Like that's how good he was. So like to get to play with him was pretty cool. And I was just brought in because I knew the drummer from playing with him in another band in the local scene when I moved up to Washington. So like he was like, hey, I just need somebody to come and hold down the rhythm with me. And I was like, dude, I got you. I'll come play in like this straight up poetry, spoken word Jamaican reggae band. That'd be cool. I also played in like a gospel reggae band, which was pretty fun. I'm not very religious, but like
Yeah,
they
yeah,
had
that's
some,
interesting.
they had some bangers, John. Like, and they had 4-part harmonies, and they were all from like Hawaii and stuff like that. So it was like, it was beautiful. Like I was just like, oh, okay, like I could get down on this. Like this is, I may not like agree with everything, but like they weren't too like God, God, God. It was more like how can we incorporate into like the real life of how we implement it. And I was like, all right, I respect that. I'll play keys for you guys. So, and I knew the drummer just because my boy Mike, because he runs a festival out there. So it was good times, man. You know, I had a lot of fun touring around, playing music, getting to meet people, interact with a lot of different males and females. So it was a good time.
Nice. How the hell were you homeless? What happened there?
Oh man. So like, okay, I came off this tour and I didn't plan it right. This was, stupid kid, not making decisions, just living life by the seat of his pants, John. And I was working full time. I don't know, after going home and coming back once before, I don't know what the situation was. I'd have to deep dive into the annals of my memories here, but it was just bad choices, in that regards of not lining up a proper place to stay. And I came off tour and I was just like, you know what? F it. Like, I'm not going to like rely on anybody right now. I'm just going to experience this. So like, I just left my bag, I think, at like my buddy's friend's house, put it in like, his closet or whatever it was. He was just like, hey, if you need to take a shower, let me know. And I was like, all right, cool. Or if you go out and you experience it, and you sleep behind, stores and sleep in parks. One night I hopped a fence to a Catholic church, like one of those big Catholic compounds.
Yeah.
Have like bunkers on it where probably people live there. I don't know, maybe through school. I don't know what it was, but their gate was locked, but like it was a very low gate. So I just hopped it. And my thought process was, I can't get in trouble for wanting to sleep at God's house, right? That was my thought process at the time. And I was correct.
Yeah,
no, I was correct. I mean, there might have been a tribute to the fact that I also probably didn't look threatening. I mean, let's be real. It's also America, where 70% of the population was made up of white people. So like, I didn't look too dirty. So it just looked like I probably wanted to sleep at God's house, which was kind of my intention that night, so like I slept there, and like when I woke up in the morning, the gate was open. So like somebody had come and opened up the gate and seen me, had to have seen me sleep, right? And they didn't wake me up. They didn't bother me. So I was like, all right, so that night was meant to be. So you go through different experiences like that when you're just kind of like out living. I never did the drugs or anything like that other than, my cannabis, my love. But like, I'm not into the hardcore needles and meth and heroin and all these crazy drugs. So like, I wasn't inebriated or anything like that. It was just, you do it. But yeah, sleep in different places, couch surf, slept in the back of a smoke shop. My buddy ran a smoke shop. Shout out to Up in Smoke, Tempe's finest. I was just out there. But yeah, he let me like crash in the back of his smoke shop, like run security, work for him. It was pretty cool. It was nice of him. You get good like opportunities. But yeah.
Were you living a sad, lonely life though at that point though?
No, actually, because my friends were in Arizona. So like I would hang out with them or, meet up with them or whatever it was. And we were all young. So it wasn't like you could be in a situation where I could be like, hey man, can I come stay at your house now? Or can I come do this? Like, and I'm not that type of person that is going to be that guy. Like if I'm putting myself in that situation, I put myself in that situation. So it's not your responsibility. It's my responsibility. So, that's how I look. And I've got pretty close friends because of it who are always like trying to give me stuff or trying to support me. I'm like, nah, dude, I'm doing it. Like unless it's fun or, fun activity or, traveling or something, obviously it's different. But, when it comes to
learning and growing, I guess, right?
yeah, everyone's got to learn. You got to grow. You got to become adults. As we went through our 20s, we did that. Now we're in our 30s and we're kind of just like, man, we were just stupid kids, like just saying stupid things and doing stupid things. But hey, you got to kind of go through that to understand how this world works. And I'm still learning. I think we're all still learning. I think everyone's continuing to learn up until the day you go. Like, this world's way too big for any one person to comprehend.
So let's talk about wrestling for a second. You mentioned one wrestling. You mentioned Bill Apter. How'd you actually like get in with him? Is that something where you applied to it? You messaged him? Like, how did you get in with Bill?
Yeah, so that was actually via a relay of Big Ray. So I had put out a couple, like, I wouldn't say, you might call them pilots, trials, reels, demos of practicing in front of my green screen. And I was doing this news report called the IWR. I was calling it the Impact Wrestling Report.
Okay.
So I was doing like a 15, 20-minute segment, and I, green screen to the full graphics, to the whole cliche of the news report and whatnot. And this is still not even having gone to school yet. Like I kind of had some minor background of computers in like 04, 05, 06. I got into like understanding how Adobe worked back then, when we had like Dreamweaver and Flash and whatnot and Fireworks or whatever. So like I would go back and use all that stuff. And like, so I had like a comprehension in Photoshop of what to do. So I was like, okay, I understand the concept here. And I understand by watching news and television and sports for so long, I just need to kind of practice it and put it together. So I just submitted some tryouts, and Big Ray then was like, he showed it to Bill Apter, and Bill Apter was like, yeah, you can do that on our channel. So I just started producing some content on the channel, and then, just eventually, blossomed to a good friendship, I guess you might say there in regards to Big Ray, and, a nice associate connection with Bill Apter. Eventually, when I was in college, he even let me put up one of my final projects. It's still up on the channel. It's did like a expose on Ethan HD. He's an independent wrestler up in the Northwest region. And it's about 6-7 minutes. And I got to tell you, it's pretty freaking good. I shot it, edited it, did all the effects for it, so obviously it was good enough that, people, he wanted it on our channel. So anyway, I've showcased that as my demo. Like I just showed it to somebody a couple days ago. They're like, you did all this? I was like, yeah, bro. They're like, you work in master control though. And I was like, yeah, I know, but I know how to do this, So.
Nice. Shoot job. You're working in master control, right? That, as they say, the old shoot job.
Shoot job. Yes, I went back to school. So that's where while I was doing the podcasting stuff, I decided to go back to school, and I got my associate's degree in broadcasting and visual production. And I actually had every intention, John, of going to I'm going to be a movie star. I'm going to make movies. That's right. Now I'm going to I went from being the actor and then the kid going, I'm going, you know what? If I don't win an Oscar via acting, I'll do it via directing, or I'll do it via, co-star or whatever. So I go to school, I get through audio, and I was like, oh, and I learned some stuff. Not that I don't like audio, but it's not as my number one passion. Then I got to operations, did like I said, the final project, did all that, mapped it all out. I was excited. Cool. All right. Now you can go to advanced productions after you take one more core class. So I get into my third core class, and this is where it all changed. I get into my third core class, and you have an opportunity to take operations or engineering. Now I knew that I really didn't want to do engineering because engineering is more labor intensive. And I don't really want to have to be paid to go be labored or, be told to be labor intensive and screw things and weld things and put wires together. I didn't want to do that. Right. So call me lazy, call me whatever you want, but I didn't want to do that. So I was like, okay, the other option was operations. So I get into class, and the first day he's explaining to us, and I get to the conclusion, wait a minute. I can get paid to watch television? And the guy was like, yeah. I was like, whoa. So I was like, and he was like, in fact, this was actually the most consistent career. You'll always get 40 hours a week. And I was like, okay, all right. Well, my dad kept telling me, plan for the worst and hope for the best. Maybe I should go this route for now. And I've got the understanding and knowledge of production and whatnot. I can still take advanced production, but let me get certified in this. I got certified and I got licensed by the Society of Broadcast Engineers. And then I just applied for one job during the summer. But because I had gotten such good grades and I had done internships at the minor league baseball teams, professional soccer teams, my professors were just like, well, if you get a job, we'll just auto pass you the last 2 years. So that's what I did. And
Wow, nice.
got my first job in a local broadcast station out in the Tri-Cities, Washington area. Worked out there for a year. And then last year I got hired out at Nexstar here in Colorado. So this is where I've been now for another year. So I'm only technically like 3 years into the industry as far as from a broadcasting standpoint.
Nice, nice. And master controller. I mean, it sounds like you're doing a big time job. I mean, that sounds pretty ominous, right?
I would say it's
Yeah.
like, think about it like you're the frontline guys on your television station and broadcasting. Like your top people, of course, are your business people making the deals to get the content, right? Then you've going down the line and you've got your producers and content editors after the content is filmed and edited. Then that gets down to traffic, who's going to like line up all the schedules and how everything plays out and where to put the commercial breaks and how long those commercial breaks are. Then that gets set down to master control. And on master control, where I'm at is the hub. So like I'm a little bit up higher than a local station. Some stations still have local master control people who run their local breaks over it. But Nexstar owns about 170 stations. So like we've got 60 in-house. We're running anywhere from 5 to 10 almost now at any given point. Of affiliates, but yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm just running commercial breaks, making sure all the content's in there. Sometimes we get to the ingest side where you're making you download the content, edit it, make sure it's prepared for playback and for commercial. Then you edit the logs. But yeah, a lot of my time is watching TV, especially like when you're watching live content. Like that's kind of my ultimate goal, is to get to more of a sports related, whether it be the bigger networks, just because they pay more. Plus, it's just more live content. So if I can get to national network where I get to tell you, well, everybody else in the country, no, this is when we're going to commercial break. The director, I just talked to him. He says, we got 15 seconds. We're going to commercial break. Here's what my promos are. You don't get to tell me what my promos and commercial breaks are. I get to run whatever I want to run. You know what I mean? Because at that point, then you've got all the big time contracts and what they're paying. So you get to choose what's important at that time if you've got to insert something. So that's kind of where I'm angling. But eventually I'll get there. Right now, I'm more of the mid-tier market. I mean, I'm in Denver. So, I mean, I'm still, I think, one of the top 25 markets in the United States. So that's nothing to sneeze at.
You hanging out with Vince Russo over there in Denver?
I tried to link up with him a couple times. If he listens to this, I offered to come over to his freaking house. And I was like, dude, I'll totally mow your lawn. I'll shovel your, snow in your driveway. Like I'm only like 30, 45 minutes away. Like I was like, I'll even come over and help her do something in person if Jeff Lane needs a day off. God, Lord knows that guy needs a day off. Nope.
Come on, Russo. Come on.
He slacks. No, actually, I think in fairness, I think he did actually tell me to hit him up like a week before I was going on vacation. So like I might have just,
you blew it.
I might have blew it. Or then the Realm Network, the stuff that went down with that they got infiltrated by some outside sources that we are unaware of.
It got, as they say.
It got.
So were you always like a big wrestling fan? I mean, it seems like obviously if you're working for one wrestling, you got to be interested at least. Were you always a big wrestling fan?
Yeah, I just grew up. I kind of fell into it. Like nobody in my household, like, or in my family liked wrestling. Like not that I knew of. I still don't know to this day. I ended up falling into wrestling just by chance at a babysitter's house. My parents had dropped me off at one of the local babysitters' house. And I had just started seeing these guys, larger than life characters, WWF at the time, wrestle. Of course, you had your Hulk Hogan, your Ultimate Warriors. Undertaker was just coming in at that time and kind of rising up. So he was kind of a scary figure too as a kid, right? Yep. So like, Yokozuna, Lex Luger, whatnot. So like I kind of grew up definitely at the end of that WWF era. Like 91 to 94, 95 before they made the turn. So that's kind of when I started watching wrestling. I mean, it basically, what got me was, as a kid, was Warrior and Hogan at WrestleMania. So that's kind of what brought me. I was left at the babysitter's house for a weekend. It was on. And that's what I ended up like. After that, I wanted to watch wrestling all the time. And my parents just didn't understand it at first. They'd be like, why are you watching this? Like, you got these guys that are imitating fighting. And my dad, bless his heart, I love my dad still. He tried to show me the alternative too. He tried to introduce me to UFC as he was getting into that. I was starting to come up too. And he was getting the VHS tape. So he was like, yeah, maybe if I show him this, he'll get more into this. And even enrolled me in karate at a young age. And I did all that and went through some of the rankings and etc. But I got into wrestling just from happened to be fortune watching at a babysitter's house. And then I just was obsessed with it, man. I just started watching it. Especially when we got into the Attitude Era when I was probably like 9 or 10. At the height of like when The Rock was just coming out of the corporation, Austin 316 was just starting up. I remember being that one of those kids that would like cut out cardboard championships and like you draw and color them and rest with your My Pillow or whatever it was, your little buddy. Did stuff like that all the time. And then it evolved into wrestling figures. I had tons and tons of wrestling action figures, which I shouldn't have traded away, John. But one day I traded them away for a Nintendo 64. But I got No Mercy, WrestleMania, and Perfect Dark and GoldenEye out of it.
So No Mercy and GoldenEye were awesome. Yeah.
Man, I felt like I got a really good deal out of it. And then I eventually got, WCW and WWE Revenge and whatnot. But that's what it turned into too, is then I got into WCW one day, flipping the channels during just the height of the Monday Night War, because at that point, you're still at a young age, you're not connecting dots like there's more than one of these bigger, larger than life things. And I think at one night I just happened to be flipping the channels like it was 9 or 10. WCW pops on. I was like, wait a minute, that's where Hogan, and then you get into that, and then you're watching back and forth with the Monday Night Wars. And then there was a period of time where I was not allowed to watch wrestling.
Why?
Yeah, it was like in early 2001, 2002, right at the beginning of the rise of Brock Lesnar and the tail end of The Rock's career. Like, in fact, I came back to wrestling. I couldn't watch wrestling for 6 months to a year. Well, I started imitating some of these moves, like because I was kind of a shorter guy, smaller guy, and I would get picked on or fucked with, and I would say sometimes I definitely deserved it because I had a loud mouth. But some of the times I wouldn't be doing anything. I would just get messed with. One time I may have pedigreed a kid on the front lawn of the school after school.
Oh, nice.
I did not get in trouble because the kid had made some obscene comments about like having sex with my sister who had just been born or something. Like, and I was like, fuck you. And I just kicked him in the fucking balls and pedigreed him. And then I had another time where
your parents were banning you from it?
Well, it led to they didn't ban me for the first 2 times because in the first 2 times I was defending myself in my sister's honor. The third time I got in trouble because like this girl who was like 3 years older than me, maybe she was like fond of me at that point, was like picking on me. And like, I think I don't know, I might've socked her or slapped her or whatever it was. Like I didn't do a wrestling move to her, I'm not gonna I wasn't going to do that to a girl, but it might've been like a push away or stop messing with me. And then my parents were like, you're influenced by pro wrestling. You're not allowed to watch pro wrestling anymore. So I wasn't allowed to watch pro wrestling for about 6 months to a year until finally one day my mom and dad were like, fine. I'm like, Mom, me getting into like a combatant with another individual has nothing to do with what I saw on TV. I was like, if I had done something to that girl, like if I had given her a pile drive or a power bomb, I was like, Mom, you got a great point here. Dad, I was like, I'd agree with you. I was like, it was like a sock or a push because the chick just wouldn't stop messing with me. I was like, sometimes things happen, I'm trying to like logically explain this to my parents. My dad was one of those guys that's into like psychology and NLP, and he's a certified hypnotherapist. So like communication was always big around. So like I could make my argument to them. So but then I'd still get grounded or spanked, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, John.
Damn. I'm always surprised when people aren't wrestling fans or didn't grow up on wrestling. I'm always surprised. Like your dad, what's he doing not watching wrestling? Come on.
I tried, man. He tried to get into it too with Kurt Angle. Like I remember him buying the wrestling figure.
Oh yeah.
Like, trying to get into it, because he watched the Olympics and all that. And he's like, oh, there's a wrestler who's got a gold medal. That's pretty cool. I'll check that out. But he couldn't get into it. Just couldn't get into the spectacle, and he couldn't get into the athletic nature, I guess, in his mind that he felt because, in some facet, of course, there's predetermination there in regards to storylines and whatnot, but he couldn't get over that fact. So he was more of a boxing fan, which turned into a UFC fan and mixed martial arts. And he still watches, I think, primarily boxing if he has his choice. Like, I think he had, watch it on HBO or Showtime or whatnot. So he's big into boxing more, I'd say, and he'll watch some of the big UFC fights if it's hyped up now.
He was probably watching that Jake Paul, Tyron Woodley.
I don't think so. Unless it's free. He'll probably watch it when it's free. Like he pays for Showtime. I know they just got that for Billions because that just came back on. Because I'll be like, hey, you want our password? I was like, So like I know that they're
But
not in.
Showtime pay-per-view is it's so screwy because I have Showtime. You turn it on and it doesn't turn on, and then you realize, oh, you have to buy the pay-per-view for $60, even though you have Showtime. So I thought it was included. So I was like, oh man. So
So
I
here's
may
my
have watched it using other ways, but
here's
still,
what I say to that. My dad's the type of person. Well, he will patiently wait for a month or two when Showtime puts it for free on a Saturday night somewhere.
gotcha. Yep,
So, and then
gotcha.
he'll record it on the DVR, and then he'll just sit on a Sunday morning and watch it. Then I'll get a random text message. Man, that Jake Paul guy, you look stupid. Like I know that's what he's going to text. I watched that fight, and I would say as Jake Paul got into the later rounds, even with Tyrone Woodley not being a boxer, you could tell Tyrone Woodley was a trained athlete, a trained fighter. He kept his composure the whole time. Whereas Jake Paul, as he started to get into the fourth or fifth rounds, I started seeing very sloppy, like overhand rights as he was trying to connect. And I was like, what is he like fighting in the street again now? So I don't know. There could
I
have
think
been.
he lost a little bit of his legs. He seemed a little gassed after that fourth, especially after taking that one nice shot that he luckily got caught by the ropes there,
I'm telling you.
because it would have been a knockdown. But yeah, Woodley, he's in great shape. Obviously, he's 39. He's going to be 40 soon. Professional athlete, not a pro boxer at all, but he looked good. I feel like he should have been more active though.
He should have been more active. I don't think Paul won that fight. I just think that fight was a draw, to be quite honest. I think that they both actually won probably 4-4 each. But and that was kind of the split decision. It came down to one judge, and now one guy gets tattooed and another guy gets a rematch.
That's so funny. It's like if you get the tattoo, I'll do the rematch. Like those two brothers are nuts. Like basically predicated on being like pro wrestling heels or the pro wrestling bad guys. That's like their gimmick. That's like what they do, and it's just the reactions that they get are great. Funny guys. You just totally tell they're totally hams. They're totally hamming it up.
Just like how the brother is just like instigating more in the
Yeah.
back. Get the tattoo. Get the tattoo. All right, I'll get the tattoo.
I don't know about them doing a rematch though. We'll see because it's all about the dollars. It's all about the
It's all
money.
hype. But like they were all saying before that, like I don't know, I ended up watching during the pre-fight. Like you ever go down some of those rabbit holes and be like, celebrities exposed why this fight or this match is already predetermined. And they mentioned the fact that Tyrone Woodley had pointed out that he already thought there was going to be a second fight. And that there had been other promoters like Dana White, other people who interjected and thought, like I know Tyrone Woodley. If he don't go in there and bust this full up, then this is all set up to get a second fight to make that money. So I mean, if that's what they're doing, good on them. Make your money. Like if people are gonna buy it, buy it.
Seems like they're into it. They're into the Paul brothers. They do very well for themselves in the boxing genre for sure. I mean, the Floyd Mayweather versus Logan Paul drew very, very well. Top 10 of all time, which is nuts considering they're going up against a bunch of Tyson fights, Holyfield fights. I mean, crazy.
Wally, that's ridiculous.
Yep, crazy. With Jake Paul and Logan Paul, Logan Paul at least is getting into wrestling a little bit too, which is kind of funny. Obviously, he was at WrestleMania,
right?
And it seems like I think he's supposed to be on again. Isn't he supposed to be on again?
The Sami Zayn conspiracy stuff and whatnot.
Mhm.
Yeah, I remember watching a couple clips about that because you get intrigued and it came out. He sat there on commentary and then didn't really get really physical. It just kind of left the ring. So I mean, I guess if WWE feels like they can capitalize on his celebrity, good for them for trying. I think at this point, from their perspective, they're probably just more or less throwing things at a wall to try and either appease specific audiences, members of their boards, or just they're not really focused on one specific goal in mind. It's just a kerfuffle of different things. And I'm not saying you can't have multiple storylines and angles, but like when you've got one guy, Vince McMahon, at the top making decisions that aren't resonating with the current audience, then there needs to be a shift in thinking. And I'm not saying Vince McMahon needs to step down, but he needs to like open up his more of the creative circle in that regard and then let people kind of dictate the audience itself, kind of even more dictate what they want and play to that more and then mix back in your own style. You don't have to go back to, the 90s, style of more of aggressive in your face nature content like that was out there, right? Where people were being blunt and on PC, but you can walk that line a little bit as we've seen in different aspects and get things across that can be emotional. So, I don't know. From all accounts, it sounds like these guys are gearing up to sell it. I don't know. I've been listening to a lot of Jim Cornette, like on YouTube lately, just listening to these clips and just him analyzing Nick Khan's dots and whatnot. And I'm not saying I agree 100%, but an argument can be made that WWE, with all the cuts they're making, getting rid of these big stars that were clearly big money draws, they were at merchandise at least, and as far as in fandom, and moving forward in regards to like a movie studio, almost like anybody can be replaced, right? Take Disney, Black Widow, the Scarlett Johansson chick, she's gone, thinking she's done. They could do Marvel alternate universe and just cast anybody else they want. So like, it's that same principle in theory that you can just replace with more wrestlers. So WWE is running like a machine right now. Good for them. They're making their money. So I'm not hating, but it's just not the content that I'm really impressed with and that I'm invested in at the moment. I don't know how I got there, but it started with Logan Paul.
Well, Nick Khan, if obviously the CRO, Chief Revenue Officer for them, just basically said in an interview that they're looking at the present and the future, and that's where they're headed, and that's kind of why they cut so many guys. So basically saying he didn't see money in those people now and doesn't see money in those people in the future. Not really taking a dig at them, but I guess their current presentation hasn't been resonating with him and WWE and Triple H and Vince and everybody else. So that's kind of why they cut a bunch of people. But I just think that they had too many guys to begin with. I mean, they were at one point, they signed like everybody. It was nuts. They signed like 100 people. Then over the last 2 years, they've cut 100 people. So it's like almost course correcting itself.
Yeah, I feel like, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I don't feel for the professional wrestlers, but I do feel like the professional wrestlers definitely have more of an advantage in regards to negotiating power, in regards to getting their next gig. Whereas like some of the production people, like I feel bad for them. And maybe that's just I'm a production guy. You work your whole life to finally get to that pinnacle of this huge live entertainment production that you get to be on the road and do every week. And all of a sudden you're just fired because there's budget cuts, even though the company's making the most profit it's ever made in the history.
Yep.
So it's very disheartening in that regard. Now, I'm not saying those guys won't get jobs. I mean, those guys will be able to get work, especially if they've got 3 to 6 months of experience. People will be like, man, you did that for 3 to 6 months straight, or you're on the road that long and doing all this stuff. You must be seasoned and, tightened up. Heck yeah, we want to bring you in. Right. So like, I'm not saying those guys aren't going to get jobs. I'm just thinking about, the goal as a kid, maybe not everybody wants to be a pro wrestler. I didn't really want to be a pro wrestler. Like I kind of learned that at an early age, 13, 14, when I was doing acting and like choreographing like fight scenes from like, Romeo and Juliet and like Hamlet and Macbeth and stuff like that. And I would be like, oh, I don't want to do this all the time. Like, this was just falling on a stage. Like these guys got to fall on this mat, hundreds of nights a year. I don't want to do that. But I thought, maybe one day if I was old enough or looked the part enough, if I was going to be an on-screen character, I could do some form of capacity, just not physical in that nature. And if that comes to fruition, I'd be, happy. If it doesn't, I'm not going to be, crying about it. But, I'm of the mindset that anything I put out to the universe, I usually get. So if I'm telling you it's going to happen, it's probably going to happen. I mean, I already called wrestling some wrestling matches, so I made that happen, which you can check it out on YouTube. So, I mean, I'm not lying.
Nice. Doing some indie wrestling?
Yeah, I mean, before COVID started for about 6 months, I was doing commentary for Without a Cause Wrestling up in Washington.
Right.
So,
nice.
They're all on YouTube. I mean, I called one of the last matches before they went to the break, which was like Chris Bay versus Alexander Hammerstone for their championship. But they're getting ready to come back. But of course, I moved away, and it wasn't like anything like, we're firing you because you suck. It was like, dude, hey, like you live like 300 miles away now. Like, kind of makes it hard.
Are you dealing with Big Max over there?
Big Max? Yes, Big Max Zaleski. That's right.
Yes.
Hey, he's a cool dude. So
interviewed him, I want to say 2 weeks ago.
Oh, really?
Nice yeah, nice guy.
Yeah, Max is an awesome guy. He works in the gaming industry now too on the side. So he's a cool guy. He's actually one of the credits in the new Marvel Avengers update for the Black Panther. He's actually
really
as the event coordinator. Yeah, I'm friends with him. So
wow, awesome!
Nice
Look at him.
Nice guy.
Damn.
He's a cool dude. Nice. Yeah. So, but like that's what it was. It wasn't like, oh, I hate you, man. We're getting rid of you. It was like, hey, dude, you moved like 300 miles away now. I kind of got this local. Yeah. I was like, I respect that. No worries, dude. So like, and then like I moved down here to Denver, and last year I worked for my buddy Joe, who does the South Park podcast with me. He runs Primo's Pro Wrestling out here. which they do more of like hardcore deathmatch type style wrestling. They do an annual like Slave to the Death match. They've got John Wayne Murdoch coming up on the next one. Like he's a big deathmatch guy, and Craven from AEW plays the Minister guy. That guy with Vicky Guerrero and what's the chick's name?
Nyla Rose.
Nyla Rose. Yeah, I don't know why I wanted to say Naomi for something. I almost got confused there, but yeah. So they got that guy coming in. So like, you know, I'm probably going to be doing some more things with him, especially because my schedule is changing here. So I might be working there actually the next couple of weeks. It's coming up on September 18th. So if you're in the area, or it should be on Fight TV, I should be going over with him this weekend. He said he wanted some assistance in running all the operations. So we were going to go, you know, a little practice with Nuts if they're going to be doing it in-house. So that'll be fun to kind of watch them walk through that process of setting up their own production and going live for the first time by themselves.
Pretty cool.
You know, by themselves. So
are you doing any wrestling podcasts right now? I know obviously you're not with HMG right now, but are you doing any wrestling stuff? You were doing Stevie Ray, you were doing Like Diffuse, you were doing a lot of good stuff over there. Any wrestling stuff going on right now?
No, I am not doing
Oh,
any wrestling. I am just watching wrestling as a fan. I'm watching AEW mostly as a fan itself, which is kind of nice. Jonas gets like, it builds anticipation again on a weekly basis, like taking a step back and not analyzing wrestling or talking with wrestling and getting different opinions and just watching it like a TV show again. It kind of builds the excitement again. Like I watched Rampage after that Punk debut, and I was genuinely excited for the next 5 days. Like, man, I could not wait to watch Dynamite again. Was I let down a little bit? Yeah, I think we were going to be, just because you can't really capture that same electricity because it's so kind of a once in a lifetime moment for that guy and that experience, right? Everything came into place perfectly. So, but I still felt like the show was decent, and like they've started to build some excitement and momentum for their company by bringing in some of these bigger names and pushing out some of these indie stars off to some of their more developmental based content online, whether it be Darker Elevation. Which I'm not saying it's, you know, the bad thing, but some of these guys that were on the main roster at the beginning of AEW were not ready, television ready to be on there. And they still may not be ready in general, because from a psychological standpoint, they may not be making the best choices that could be detrimental long-term to their careers, you know, getting injured and whatnot, or injuring others. So you've got to go with more of the professionals. And if you've got an opportunity to get big name stars to grow your brand, I don't care if people go, these are ex-WWE guys, whatever, dude. Like you can't tell me you've worked for one company in your industry and then haven't switched to another company. Like I did that tons of times. I'm doing that now. I've worked for multiple news stations, multiple broadcast companies. You know, when I worked in sales, I worked for Comcast and DirecTV. They were direct competitors. And I worked for Verizon Wireless. I worked for AT&T. So like, you can work for these direct competitors, and at the end of the day, you're just another individual working there. And that's kind of how these wrestlers are too. You know, that's kind of how everybody is, unless you're the main guy at the top, right?
Yep. The other thing I was annoyed with was that they came out and said, "Oh, we're not going to sign XWB guys." Like, to come out and say it and do it, like, that's the only thing I was annoyed at, because it's like, well, what if they release somebody, or if you get your hands on Punk or something like that, or get your hands on Malachi Black, aka Aleister Black? It's like, don't you have to sign the guy? So saying that, I think, was just a little annoying, because you're like, I don't know, if like that doesn't really resonate. That's not going to make sense if somebody comes across your lap that's a good XWB guy, you know.
I would agree that them coming out and saying that from the top was definitely misguided. They made a lot of mistakes, like any young company, I think, does. I think that they had that sense when they came out. No, we're going to build our guys. These are our guys. These are indie guys, right? Have them come out just even that first year. And a lot of these guys aren't the best wrestlers. They're not the best individuals as far as charismatically connecting with an audience. You know, everybody in the back, everybody in the wrestling world, really, I mean, even though, yes, he hadn't been around in 7 years, everybody in the wrestling world needed to take notice on how CM Punk controlled that audience and controlled the crowd, and what it meant to be in front of a live crowd and be that over with the crowd, right? So, like, though far and few between a Chris Jericho, John Moxley, you know, and maybe a few other couple stars like the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, there wasn't a lot of hype really going into the show other than the niche-based audience. So when they got to the main stage on TNT and you got those big ratings off the top as people checked it out, and then realized, well, I might not like the storylines in WWE, but WWE's wrestling is really good. Like, they don't mess up like these people. Like, and they make smart decisions. Sometimes the matches aren't as long as I'd like them to be, and sometimes, yeah, they can be a little sloppy if it's like from a new person standpoint. From it's like NXT, but like once you're on WWE, these guys are crisp most of the time, you know. So like to try and downgrade their mindset to that, you know, maybe lower based wrestling program that was developing, it was hard, and they made a lot of, you know, like I said, a lot of missteps with them coming out and doing the making statements, the whole bracket thing and the contender stuff. Like, I thought that was a great idea, but they never stuck to it, because then they have like holes in their plot line, the story, like Billy Gunn, he's 10-0, making his Dynamite debut. I'm like, then why isn't he the number one fucking contender? Like, I don't understand.
Did you notice though? Also, with the Gun Club, they have a combined record of 86-7, and Colton Gunn, I guess the younger one, but the taller one, is 25-0. I was like, so why isn't he ever on TV or ever contend? It just doesn't make sense. Somebody's got to realize, like, wait, this guy's 25-0, 86-7 as a team, basically a group of all the records put together. It's nuts.
Would you be opposed? And I know if he's listening to the show, he will be opposed, because I know he doesn't like championship belts, that being Jargo. But would you be opposed, John, to like some sort of darker elevation belt? Like, should they be doing something down there on darker elevation, like an NXT style belt, where they're trying to develop these guys down there and gals?
Well, I heard that they're going to move the tapings possibly to Universal Studios altogether, so it won't be taped with the show. So I think then you probably do need a title or something to make it more important and to make it kind of cooler for the people that are going to go to that show and watch that show, because it's going to be completely separate seemingly from Dynamite and from Rampage. So you might need to, especially with all these guys having these crazy records. I don't know, it might be like a good incentive to watch the show rather than just watch quote unquote dark matches.
Do you feel like, or do you know, is this, if you can give me some news, is this going to be in the same soundstage as WCW or the same soundstage as TNA?
I'm not sure if it's the same exact soundstage, but I know it's the same area because all
Oh,
those sound stages are near,
a
in
lot of
the
wrestling
vicinity of each other.
in that
Yeah,
part.
I feel like Tony Khan is a big WCW mark, and he wants to film in Universal. I think.
It's like he wants to resurrect what WCW could not finish. It's
Right,
like
right.
he saw something that was like, man, if I was the owner of WCW, I would have done it this way. And that's what he's leaning, at least, you know, as far as some of his principles, if you will. You know, I think that they have definitely stepped their game up just in the last 2 weeks with CM Punk
Yep.
joining. You know, I watched that behind the scenes video of CM Punk debuting, and you had a very famous director back there. So it wasn't Tony Khan, or it wasn't Cody Rhodes, or whoever it was. It was a very famous director. I can't think of it off the top of my hand, so forgive me. But I mean, like, this guy started off as a camera operator for the WWF back in the 1980s. And then eventually he got tired of Kevin Dunn and went up and started working in baseball. I was working the World Series. And then eventually, like, just doing wrestling as a passion, right? So, like, they brought this guy in, right? So they brought this big time director in. And I noticed it watching that CM Punk as I watched it initially. I was like, man, this is really well produced. And that's one thing I would harp on when I was reviewing a Light the Fuse is, I'm not going to pick out when a wrestler messes up a move or, doesn't do something correctly in the ring because I'm not a wrestler. I'll pick out if I think the storyline is stupid, but I will definitely dissect production if I think, like, well, what were you doing there? And he was flawless. So, like, if they're stepping up their production game, they're stepping up the wrestlers that are joining them, then the only thing sounds like they need to do last thing is, you don't have to make writers, but at least get a team together and go mull some ideas over and make a decision. You know what I mean? Like, it
Yep.
doesn't let Tony Khan be the ultimate decision maker, fine, but put your staff together and say, I have these team of people, and we sit down and we float these ideas and we come to a conclusion, and I make the decision if if a tie needs to be broken or whatnot, or if I have my own opinion. It's not that hard. If you said that, then people would stop going, oh, you don't have writers and you don't have people there that are doing your storylines. It just, even if you kayfabe it, I don't care. Just tell the audience, tell people that you've got some sort of group. And then that way, one person doesn't take the fall, I guess. I mean, Tony Khan. Because he's the butt of the big jokes, right?
Yeah, yeah. And that guy, the director, Tim Walbert.
There you go. Tim
Yep.
Walbert.
Yep.
Very
Veteran.
famous director.
Veteran
Very,
director. Yeah.
very famous for director.
So with AEW, I mean, you're watching them. Do you watch WWE and stuff? Do you watch ROH and Impact and everything else? Or are you just watching AEW? Because I know obviously you like the Fuse. You obviously were just watching AEW.
Yeah, I mean, helped start Light the Fuse. That was kind of my concept. In fact, like it actually started off with MLW. Like I had this, what's the name of MLW's show that was on? I'm trying to think about. Man, I can't remember. I'm so bad, but it had something to do with their show. And I was like, I'm going to start an MLW review show. And I got like 15, 20 episodes in. And then people were like, you should do AEW. And then Chris Silvio came on. Ben was like, well, I'll do the show with you guys. My boy Chris Silvio. And I was like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
cool. So I just started Light the Fuse and started reviewing AEW. So, I mean, I was watching Impact prior to that as I was reviewing it with Big Ray. And something that I don't like brag about, but when I was in high school, I used to write Impact Wrestling reports for the Pro Wrestling Report, the most watched professional wrestling news show since 1998.
Wow. Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So, I mean, I worked with those guys with Damian Nelson, the man they call Meathead. In fact, I got to interview David Hero. It was like one of my first or second interviews. So that was kind of like a full circle moment from the high school
Know
kid.
David very well. A great guy.
Yeah. So, and I'm friends with that guy. He's an awesome guy. So, like, you know, super best friend. So, like, that was what I had started off with, just was writing reports because I was like a pretty, you know, I like to think of myself as a pretty good writer. If I'm invested in something, like if I'm really invested in something, like I'm very detailed into it and very imaginative, and I can bring you into what you're reading, like an author would, right, for a story. And I started doing that when I was a kid, just to like write out like my feelings, and then and turn into like just let me write out wrestling stuff. I did like, I remember E-Feds. I don't know if those are still.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
So I did E-Feds back in the day, up until a point where we started doing capture cards, where like we would like capture it on video. In fact, one of my most viewed videos of all time, The Rock versus Batista from like SmackDown 2007. If you look that up on YouTube, it comes up like XPW, XWE, 500, 600,000 views. It's copyrighted, so I didn't get any money. Okay. But yeah, stupid Batista song got me. And anyway, so I mean, I guess I could log back in. I could copyright that out, huh? I could remove that. I should do that.
Yeah. I'm not sure why you didn't already.
I don't, you know, I was a stupid kid. So I started with that and E-Feds writing, and that led me, you know, into just getting into the Pro Wrestling Report one day. Like I just submitted an article, and like Damian Nelson was like, "This was really good." I was like, "All right, you can do it." And next thing I know, I'm working for the Pro Wrestling Report. So like I had some interest even back then. I did Ustream podcasts back in the day.
Yeah, I remember Ustream. Yeah. Yep. Remember Blog.
Did all that. We had like TK websites. I don't know if you ever used those. Like there were like free websites and like blog type websites that you could set up. They were hosted like from foreign.
Yes.
So I did a lot of that. So we would that's how you would stream it. So what we would do is you'd put up the stream of like Monday Night Raw, and I would do like a 1 hour pre-show. In fact, I remember doing the pre-show when Chris Benoit died, as I was sitting there talking during the pre-show as a kid in high school, like 16.
Wow. Damn.
And someone said that in the chat room, and I was like, don't mess around like that. That's not funny. And someone was like, no, this is all real. And then everyone was like, no, this is real. And then all of a sudden, like, you just like Google it really quick, and boom, you know, the height of Google and whatever it was, the early onset, the news had just broke, and you're like, whoa. So yeah, I remember being a kid then and that happening, you know, as a wrestling fan. I remember Owen Hart passing away, and that happened because I was living in Simi Valley, California, and I had another friend named Matt. Coincidentally, he lived in the same building, and he was a wrestling fan. So this is like my first true wrestling fan I had met. That was like a good friend of mine, and his parents always ordered the pay-per-views. So I remember like watching Over the Edge at his house when that happened. I remember seeing, I guess, rest in peace, the fabulous Mae Young's boobs at the
yes.
Was it Survivor Series or Royal Rumble during
Royal
the
Rumble? Yeah.
Royal Rumble? That was horrible. Those squashes are imprinted in my mind, John, since I was a child.
Yeah, I was there live for that one. That was not
I'm
fun.
sorry. That's even worse.
Yeah, not fun. Had good seats too, regrettably.
Oh, I'm sorry. That tops my story. But yeah, I know your pain. I know your pain. It's the image is just burned. Like you're just like, and it never goes away because they're anyway, they look like the squashes you find at the supermarket, and you see, and you're like, God damn it.
Yeah. Yep.
And I was a kid too. So I, 7th, 8th grade. So like for me, I was still going through that adolescence where I thought I was going to get to see some boobs from the hot chicks that were actually there. And then you see that and you're like, ah,
Not quite.
took me a while to go back and watch that Royal Rumble.
Yeah. It's not my favorite.
Austin wins it, right? I think that's Austin wins that.
No, The Rock.
No,
The Rock wins that one. Yep.
See, that's a good Royal Rumble.
Yeah.
It's a good Royal Rumble. And The
Eliminates
Rock
the
was
Big Show
perfectly
lane.
rated. Rock was perfectly rated. Just saying.
He's great. There's no doubt about that. With you and wrestling, everything else, I wanted to also talk, because you mentioned it kind of briefly. South Park. You're a big South Park guy, big South Park fan. You loving what they've been able to do over the years, the consistency of South Park. I mean, always great politically, making fun of both sides, obviously, but always timely, always great. So friggin' funny. I mean, after all these years, they're still knocking it out of the park. They're still hilarious.
Yeah, I'm a huge South Park fan. I guess for those maybe don't know, for the first time I host a podcast. It's called
Suck my balls, suck my balls, my balls, my balls, suck my balls.
Suck My Balls, a South Park review, which is from the reference of the show. It's got a very synonymous phrase there throughout all 24 seasons now. In fact, my intro song, it actually has like just all the different times. Like as far as I think I went through like the first 4 or 5 seasons and put like all the different times that he says "suck my balls," from at the end of this day, you will suck my balls, some stuff. So that's what the reference is from. I don't actually want you to try and place my testicles in your mouth. It's just as a reference. I might say it, but
Just the Cartman thing. Yeah.
It's just South Park. So I'm a huge South Park nerd. It's definitely my favorite show of all time. The fact that even some of the episodes that were done 15 years ago continue to resonate today, or 19 years ago. I just got done reviewing, which will come out by the time your listeners listen to this episode. We just got done reviewing Red Hot Catholic Love. And the whole premise of that episode was the priests having the controversy of trying to hide their having pedophilia with children and the sexual abuse that went through. And that came out eventually, and still kind of, there's still the fallout from that. I was mentioning to my co-host that I always see paid commercials at work that are like, if you need to contact a lawyer about Boy Scouts or this. So like they're still dealing with the fallout from that. So it's interesting that all this information that they put out 20 years ago when they were, talking about things that weren't as well known or well publicized or at the onset of the internet. So there wasn't as many people connected, that it wasn't as well known. And now we can go back and look at their content and still holds up to today. I would say the first 3 seasons aren't necessarily as relevant because it was more slapstick. But once you get past 4, they start really hitting like the actual writing, which we're into season 6 right now. Then the political satire and the nature in which they're speaking on the content resonated then. If we look back, and it resonates still now, or at least we can like look at through a looking glass and go, "Oh, that's what they were talking about." Man, they were so right.
Yep, absolutely. Love me some South Park.
Yeah, man, we're 90 episodes in as far as reviews. So we've been reviewing, or I guess it's technically 87 or 88 as we reviewed the pilot episode and the movie as part of our process. But as far as this podcast, we just recorded our 90th episode. Suck My Balls number 90. So that's out everywhere if you just look up the podcast. So, Twitter, South Park. It's actually Suck My Balls Pod on Twitter. So,
nice.
get confused.
Follow. Yeah, follow them for sure. So as we hit the wind down, we head towards the finish here. What's next for MSG? What's down the pike? What do you got coming up?
So I can't necessarily like reveal too much yet because like I don't like to jinx myself, and B, I don't like to give things away that maybe may or not come to fruition. However, I am currently invested right now in accelerating my career as far as from the broadcast standpoint, master control operations. I've got a second round interview coming up with the company, which again, I'm not trying to jinx myself, but if I get that one, that will be pretty big. So that's kind of what I'm aiming. Other things on the side is I've been producing just some mini content with my friends. We've been taking video footage and just trying to start producing our own content, starting our own little side production company. As we're all now a little bit older. We all have the degrees and the experience, if you will. So as most of my friends all went back to school too. So just doing stuff like that. But trying to get better at being a editor, taking more classes, whether it be through certification online or and maybe in person. I thought about taking some acting classes again and getting back into acting, as there's some acting classes here in the area that are starting up in a couple weeks. So I got to give notice to my apartment building to move here in about 2 months. So I'm just kind of at a whirlwind here where things are just colliding. And I'm just kind of like just hanging out on a kite. I'm just flowing. You know what I mean? I try not to be too stressed about things. I was telling you before we got on here, I just got done like some 5-minute meditation. So I'm feeling pretty good.
Yeah.
But in general, I try not to let myself get too stressed about life. When I was a kid growing up, as I mentioned, my dad's into psychology and NLP as we're winding down. I read a lot of self-help books. So like Dale Carnegie was a big influence on me. And, you know, whether it be How to Win Friends and Influence People. But the big one I took away when I was like young, 21, 22, is I read this book called Stop Worrying and Start Living, where the focus, just to take this away, just to simplify it, is if you live in a day type compartment, and this is, I'm actually in a perfect position. I'm in my studio. You're not gonna be able to see this, but on one side I've got a door and another side I've got a door, right? And I'm in the middle. One door is locked behind me. I can't go back because that was yesterday. And the other door is locked because it's tomorrow, and I can't go forward because that's tomorrow. I can only control what's in my current present. So that's just what I try to live by now. I can only control what's in my current present and try to plan, of course, for what I hope to be a good future. But I don't get that key till the end of the day, John. So I don't know what I'm going to do, man. You know,
Said, though. Well said.
Going forward, you know. Read some books. Read some books, people.
Where can everybody find you? What's the social media, the South Park plugs, everything you got?
Well, as I mentioned at the top of your show here, I'm your host on the scene where the air is clean. I'm lighting up that green. Ya boy, MSG. You can follow me on Twitter and on Instagram at Mathew_Shaffer each and every Wednesday morning on all of your podcast outlets. It's the classical sense of suck my balls, a South Park review, where me and my host, Joe Vernola, who is also the co-host and promoter of Primrose Pro Wrestling and works for DCW, so he's worked with Vince Russo himself. You can check them out on all outlets. We host the South Park podcast, where we actually break down the show in linear fashion. So we started with the pilot episodes, and we've just gone episode by episode, John. And they just got renewed even more for season 30. So we're in season 6 right now. And they got 15 new movie specials that they're going to be putting out for Paramount. So we're just never going to run out of content. So check us out on all podcast outlets. We do have a YouTube. The audio does go there. There are a couple seasons up there where we did video, but there's a lot of video editing goes into work. And to be quite honest, we get more downloads on the audio side. I'm not going to wangling it here and tell you that I'm number one in fucking Brazil or whatever it is. But I will say that enough people download the podcast that it pays for Spreaker's monthly monetization. So that's all I can say. People do listen to it enough to where I don't have to pay anything out of pocket anymore. So that's nice. I appreciate that. So if you want to join the South Park Suck My Balls army, you can tweet it at us at Suck My Balls Pod or Instagram at Suck My Balls Pod on those platforms. South Park Pod itself on Facebook, which is pretty cool. Or just type in Suck My Balls South Park Review. And as well as you can Gmail us. Not a lot of people Gmail us. Sometimes they do. They want to give their feedback. suckmyballspod@gmail.com. And yeah, we'll be here each and every week for all of your South Park needs, John. That's what I'm here for. And shout out, of course, to, the Russo brand. I'm still a subscriber. I'm going to continue to be a subscriber for those people. Oh, you love Hamin Media Group. No, I still subscribe to everything. This is still my crew, my boys. Still talk to everybody. Just, I'm just decided to do other things for now. That's all. It's cool. You do things. I do my things. John does his things. Me and John got to talk about these pins at some point because we got to start making that money.
Yes. But MSG, thank you so much for all the time today. Really appreciate it. And good luck with everything.
It has been my pleasure to finally be on the two-man power trip. The two-man power trip with John Poz versus right here on the Realm Network.